counties for being great hosts today, for both inviting Alabama EMA and FEMA to your neighborhood to kind of talk a little bit about fire grants, hurricane preparedness activities, and COVID-19 response activities. And the conflation of all those has been very, very challenging. Before we start, I'd like to introduce Chief of Staff of Governor Ivey, Joe Bonner, for some welcoming comments.
Well, Director Hastings, thank you very much for representing the governor and her cabinet. The governor's sorry she's not here, but we are so grateful to have the administrator from FEMA here with us today. Administrator Gaynor said that this is not his first trip to Alabama, but it's his first trip to Alabama's Gulf Coast. And the mayors and the county commissioners have already extended a warm welcome to get him to come out to enjoy Mardi Gras, to enjoy the Hangout Festival, to enjoy the beaches, and to not come back when we're dealing with a hurricane, because we hope during your time, and we hope it's a long time as administrator, you don't have to come back here to deal with that. But it is good to be prepared, and that's the message of today, is to be prepared, whether it is COVID-19 that we're all living with, or whether it's a hurricane, a tornado, an oil spill, or other things that have happened to this area of the country over the last 15 or 20 years. If you're prepared, you're ready to deal with it, and if you're not prepared, then bad things happen. So on behalf of Governor Ivey, we appreciate the media coming out today, but especially appreciate the administrator coming to see what the Gulf Coast is really like in the best of times, and hopefully if those worst of times come, then we know we've got a friend and a partner with the administrator and with President Trump. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Chief Bonner. And in fact, today on Governor Ivey's desk is the FEMA state agreement for two more major disaster declarations. The one from the 12-13 April tornado outbreak, which is the 5th largest outbreak in Alabama history, and the one from the following Sunday, 19 April. And so those will be going back up to FEMA today. It's just a testament of the strong relationship that FEMA has with Alabama and our counties, who are the pointy edge and the folks that, just like politics, disasters and politics are local. And the capability of our counties is the capability of the emergency management enterprise across the United States. It is with great pleasure that I get to introduce the FEMA Administrator Pete Gaynor today, and I appreciate you were able to stop in Alabama along your your coast tour of the southern states. Pete. Thanks, Brian.
Take this thing off here. It's a pleasure to be in Alabama again. So let me just thank everyone I met today, and if I leave you out, it's an accident, and you can talk to me after. But thank you, Chief of Staff Joe Bonner, for being here today on behalf of the governor, Mayor Stimpson and Mayor Kraft. Thank you, Commissioners Underwood, Hudson, and Ludgood, the Alabama EMA Director, my friend Brian Hastings. Thanks, Brian, for putting this all together today. The Mobile, Alabama EMA County Director Mike Evans for hosting. Baldwin County Director Zach Hood, the Mobile Fire Chief Mark Seeley, the Public Safety Director Jim Barber, and my Region 4 Regional Administrator Gracia Check, who's here, that is really my point person when it comes to Alabama. So thank you for today. So just a few things I'd like to chat about today. First is hurricane season. We're deep into the season. A number of named storms already, and that will continue as we get into the heart of hurricane season on the Atlantic and the Gulf Coast. We are approaching the 15-year anniversary to Katrina. We have learned many lessons from Katrina along the way. 15 years is a long way to go, but I know by talking to some of the team here this morning that they've embraced many of those lessons, and we want to continue to remember those hard lessons from Katrina and from other storms. Recovery continues. Recovery takes a long time, takes a lot of dedication, and again, you have to do that in partnership from the federal, the state, the county, the tribes, and the territories. All have to do it together. But when you embrace recovery, you embrace resilience. You make your communities stronger, and strong communities bend but will not break when impacted by a natural disaster. There are challenges that remain. Alabama's already had 3 natural disasters this year. We hope that's the end of it. And it complicates the landscape, right, to have recovery ongoing, new disasters. And what really complicates the landscape, especially this year, is our response to COVID-19. And we've talked about a number of different things that we want, as federal government, we want locals and states and tribes and territories to do to be better prepared. And when we FEMA first took over coordination for the federal response for COVID-19 for the President and the White House Coronavirus Task Force, one of the things we realized back in March is that hurricane season is coming. And so right away we got all the smart people in the room to build the COVID-19 pandemic operational guidance for the 2020 hurricane season. And in here are best practices that we want locals and states, tribes and territories to embrace. What we're asking is look at your current plans, your current procedures, your current memorandums of agreement, and do they still hold up under COVID-19 response? You're going to need more time for evacuations. You may need more shelter space. You may need more transportation vehicles. You can't put all those people on one bus. Maybe you need 2 or 3 buses. So all those kind of things that make this hurricane season a little bit more complicated than any other season. It's complicated on a good day. COVID-19 makes it a little bit more complicated. So we want you to look at that document, share those best practices among yourself, share those back with us so we can get them distributed across the country. For emergency management to work well, and we discussed this morning with the mayors and the commissioners, it has to be locally executed, state managed, and federally supported. I started my career out as a city emergency manager. I was a state director. I was a peer to Brian as a state emergency manager, now the federal emergency management agency. But for all of it to work, locally executed, state managed, federally supported, and residents have a great role in that to make sure that they are prepared, their families are prepared, their businesses are prepared, their neighborhoods are prepared. If all those work, response works wonderfully. If any of those things have a deficit or have a gap, then we tend to run into problems. So we implore everyone to do all you can this season to make sure that you're prepared for what's in front of us. And lastly, just a couple things about COVID-19. I'm honored to be on the White House Coronavirus Task Force with the Vice President leading that charge, and of course the President leading that, along with all the people you see on TV, Dr. Fauci. Everyone loves Dr. Fauci. Dr. Jawar, Admiral or Minister, she has a couple titles, Ambassador Birx, Dr. Birx, and many others in leading the response to COVID-19. But just like mitigation in communities, building, or elevating houses on stilts, mitigation for COVID-19 work. So things like wearing a mask, keeping distance 6 feet or more, not gathering in large groups, washing your hands, all those things work. I've seen it across the country in my role on the task force. So I ask everyone, especially this season, heading into hurricane season, all those mitigation measures work. So where you can, wear your mask, maintain social distancing, and all those other things, because it does make a difference and enable all of us, not just in Alabama, but all of us across the country, to really squash that rise of COVID-19 you see across the country, especially in the Sun Belt states. So please do that. And finally, disasters do not wait, and you should not wait either if you're a resident hearing my voice today. Take time now to prepare yourself and your family. Don't be the one that says, I wish I did a little bit more before that hurricane or that tropical storm came. Do one thing today. And one thing you can do today is download the FEMA app. Lots of resources in that. Many other resources, but don't let a day go by without taking an action that protects yourself and your family. If you don't do it, you'll regret it. So be proactive and do that today. And again, it's a pleasure to be in Alabama on the coast, and I hope I come back maybe for a vacation. But I appreciate everyone's support today. And Brian, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Administrator Gaynor. I appreciate those comments. What we'd like to do now is kind of introduce some of our local mayors, and the first one I'd like to introduce is Mayor Stimpson from Mobile.
I want to join Chief of Staff Bonner welcoming the Administrator Gaynor here and say typically, if my memory is correct, we see an administrator only after a disaster. And so for you to be here today means a whole lot to us. And it's like so much preparedness. Sometimes, you know, it's kind of like that term paper that you were supposed to turn in. You may put it off a little bit, but your being here today, I think, is a prompt for us to realize that disasters don't wait and we better be ready. And the next one that we have will be different because we are dealing with COVID. So we really appreciate you being here and look forward to a return ahead of anything bad happening.
Thank you, Mayor Stimpson. Appreciate those words. Next, we're going to bounce over to Baldwin County and introduce the Mayor of Gulf Shores, Mayor Kraft.
Thank you. Delighted to be here and have the opportunity to create relationships now because it's going to be a different storm season, as we've all discussed. And there are complications we'll be facing we never faced before. And my opportunity to meet statewide and coastal area EMA managers as well as administrator from FEMA is a wonderful opportunity for me to at least be able to know somebody to talk to because we're going to need a lot of help planning for this one. So thanks for the opportunity to be here. Appreciate it very much. Thank you for including me.
Thank you, Mayor Kraft. And what we'll do is we're going to go into the counties here. We're going to allow the county EMA directors to do some comments, introduce a couple of the county commissioners. And on the back side of that, just so we can continue with the social distancing and have some rhyme or reason to people coming up here, we'll open it up to the press corps to ask questions of specific people, and then we'll rotate them to and from the podium so we don't congregate here. So again, I want to thank Mike Evans for Pete, you said that for putting this on, we just took inputs from the top down, the bottom up, and managed it as states do. And then we have a little saying in emergency management that you can tell a county what to do, but they'll tell you where to go. And it's all about the relationships prior to this. And the strength of Alabama and the strength of our mitigation, preparedness, planning, response, and recovery is clearly at the local level. And so all the partnerships that we have, the grants, the things that we do in managing are focused for the people who are sitting in this audience and the folks and the citizens of both Mobile and Baldwin County. But I'd like to introduce the Deputy Director of Mobile County EMA, Mike Evans.
Thank you, Brian. Welcome everyone for being here today. And from where I sit as a local emergency manager in Mobile, it's truly a team effort. You know, we prepare now, we respond when we need to, and we recover when we have to. And we cannot do those things without the team, the local team, our county commission, and the resources and personnel and expertise they bring, Mayor Stimpson along with his staff and all our other mayors. It's a team approach. We've got a lot of citizens that we need to assist when the time is here. And but for them too, those citizens need to prepare now because everyone's mentioned COVID-19 adds some intricate things to preparedness this year for hurricane season. So prepare now, do the things, understand it might take longer to do some of the things that you need to do that you've done in the past. Prepare now. We also have a Mobile County EMA app. It's on our website. I would encourage citizens and anyone to download. We're able to push information that's relevant at the time that we need them the most to be able to do the things that keep them and their families safe. So having said that, Brian, would you like me to introduce?
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm going to introduce Commissioner Connie Hudson from the Mobile County Commission. She's going to come up and say a few words about preparedness.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Director Gaynor, for being here with us today, and for the Regional Director, Gracia. It means a lot to have you visit with us proactively. You know, what we most try to do is be prepared. That is our job as elected officials, to make sure that our communities are prepared for any kind of disaster or man-made or natural disaster, whatever happens. And I think that what you've offered us today in terms of information, guidelines, operational guidelines in dealing with not only the hurricane and weather issues that we experience, but also that element that we have not had in the past, and of course that is the COVID, the threat of COVID, and how we would deal with those issues together, combined. So we really appreciate the information. We appreciate Director Hastings coming, and just the attention that we get. FEMA has been an excellent partner to Mobile County, not only now during as we go forward, but in the past, and to help us through other disasters that we had and in hurricane season. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. And you know, one of the blessings of being in the emergency management family is we are the power of people. We're the power of partnerships. We're the power of relationships, because especially at the state, we don't have a lot of stuff. We are who you are and what you can do, and then pooling that together. And so sometimes to our detriment, we overshare both information and stuff. We're problem solvers, so we try to fire and move, maybe quicker than other agencies are capable of doing. But it's also the reason that when we knew that the FEMA administrator wanted to come to Mobile, that we had to include Baldwin County, because this is one team, one fight here around the Mobile Bay. So I appreciate Baldwin County being here, and I'd like to introduce the Director of Baldwin County EMA, Zach Hood.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Director Hastings, Administrator Gaynor. On behalf of Baldwin County Emergency Management and the Baldwin County Commission, we appreciate the opportunity to sit down and discuss a holistic concept when it comes to dealing with COVID and hurricane preparedness in our communities. It's going to be very important for us to do that. What I would like to discuss is, if you look at the Gulf of Mexico and the 56 counties that have communities that reside on the Gulf, whether it be Florida, Louisiana, Texas, you know, disasters do not have jurisdiction. And it's very important that we continually to not only work locally and at a state, but work in a region in a capacity, so that we can share ideas, share input, get information on grants that are offered by FEMA, and do what's best for our local community based on best and common practices. So this was an exceptional event for Baldwin County. The residents are very appreciative that we are afforded the opportunity to learn and then to share with them. Our outreach program is growing by the day. We will continue to grow our outreach, and so we are very thankful and welcoming anytime that we want to work any further together. So at this point in time, I do have the chairman of the Baldwin County Commission. I have Commissioner Billy Joe Underwood.
Thank you, Zach, and it's such an honor to be here today and get to meet you, Administrator from FEMA. And I just want to say that early on in the COVID pandemic, when we were having the calls to the White House that you could get on, I remember you've said it several times today: locally executed, state managed, and federally supported. Those are something that I wrote down in my early notes, and it was something, so definitely it's in my head, if nowhere else. So I just wanted to also say that it's good to have you here, as everyone else has said, when we're not in a hurricane situation. And if that does happen, we hope that at least we know who you are now. But I want to encourage all the citizens of Mobile and Baldwin County to listen and to have your plans in place. We didn't have a blueprint for COVID-19, and we're still figuring that out on a daily basis. You know, we're all with our mask and everything now. We're trying to do our part. I heard the governor say she's really big on personal responsibility and not government mandates. So this is not a mandate for you to know how to evacuate, but take personal responsibility. Start thinking about it now. I think that one of the biggest things is personal resources when it comes to being able to leave and go out of town. Start thinking about that. I hope that we don't have to leave and go out of town, but Mobile and Baldwin County, hear our message. Be prepared. Be ready to leave early this time, because with COVID-19, that's going to be around for a little bit longer, we suppose. I wish we could snap our fingers and it would go away. I think all of you do. If my face is red, it's because this mask was hot. But I will just like to say that just be prepared to leave early this time if it happens. Our shelters are not going to be able to handle all of the people that they normally are able to handle due to the COVID pandemic. So thank you for this opportunity. It's nice to get to meet you. Thank you for this time to speak.
Thank you, Commissioner. It reminds me that no one manages individual responsibility better than individuals. We have about 5 or 10 minutes for some questions from the press pool. So if you'd like, please introduce yourself, who the question is for, and then we'll usher people up to and from the podium. Any questions?
Yeah, for the Mobile County and Baldwin County EMA
Okay.
leaders. Sorry, Lawrence Specker with AL.com. The question I have is, you know, we're hearing that you've been asked to basically go through your plans with an eye to COVID, look at the new resources you need, look at the new time you need. Go into detail a little bit, if you would, about that effort. How much manpower is it taking? How many hours is it taking? What resources are you trying to line up?
Yes, sir. I'll focus on one thing that we've really spent a lot of time on, and that's sheltering, and the commissioners mentioned that. So when we shelter in Mobile County this year, the ones in the press corps know we use some of the public schools. And I'll use one of our high schools up the road, for example. Under a normal storm, we can put 1,000 residents in there for safe purposes during a storm. Under the using the COVID-19 social distancing, that's going to drop that number to somewhere around 250. So we're losing some capacity. So that's one concern. Another concern is we have to follow the guidelines that Administrator Gaynor talked about, and there's guidelines that tell us we will screen citizens going into shelters, and we will have an area if someone thinks they've come in contact with COVID or they happen to have a fever or something, we'll have an area that those individuals have to go to. The ones who don't have a screen, that do not screen where they've got any potential COVID, they'll be in another area. So resource-wise, we're having to use more areas. Resource-wise, we can't get as many citizens in those facilities. And there's even, another concern that we need, when we open shelters, we have to have people help us run them. And traditionally, the Red Cross has helped us. And so if you think about the Red Cross, a lot of their folks are volunteers, and a lot of them are retired folks, and they're a little older. And so our older citizens have, in some cases, much more concerns than younger citizens. So there's a lot of variables involved in it, and I know I just focused on sheltering, but it's been mentioned several times. Everything that we need to do, we probably need to do it a little earlier than we have in the past when it comes to evacuation, sheltering, the citizens executing their plan, whether they're going to go out of town or go to a relative's place in a safe area. So just a lot of extra things to do, and at the end of the day, it's about making everyone as safe as possible to get through a potential storm and to be safe with the current COVID-19 situation. And I'll defer to Zach and let him have an opportunity.
Thank you. And Lawrence, I want to make sure I have your question right. Basically, what you're wanting to know is, on the front side, what has this taken for us to do what we are doing to shelter and plan for COVID, correct? Okay, good. Well, in Baldwin County, the effort really, it's been exhausting. This is a big challenge, not just locally, but nationally. Well, what are we going to do with coronavirus and sheltering? And what I can tell you is our work is on the front side, so it's now. What we are having to do is get boots on the ground with the community and help our community understand that there are changes. So that's the biggest area of effort for us, is that there's a change. And so to have a change in a community, especially as large and as fast growing as Baldwin County is we're having to get that message out. You can't just send a message out once or twice and expect individuals to understand. There actually has to be an effort of outreach, and that's what we are doing. And it's very challenging but rewarding at the same time, because it's creating an understanding. And so if you look at Baldwin County right now, we're at or around 225,000 residents. And last year alone, we had 6.6 million visitors. And so understanding that demographic as well, in terms of tourism and then the local residents, and all of that being very important, how can we best protect the life and safety? One thing I do want to address is, one of the questions that were brought up were, okay, our shelters can't handle as many people, we can't occupy like we were before. But the thing is we've always been a shelter of last resort. So we are promoting evacuation, an early evacuation, if you're able to do that. And the reason we're doing that is because you forget with an evacuation that the traffic, fuel, lodging options, they're more available. So you're going to benefit yourself if you determine often and early and in family discussion, in household discussion, hey, I need to go as soon as I can. And understanding that, you're going to have an easier evacuation effort. So we want to promote that early evacuation. We want everyone to understand that we have shelters of last resort and what exactly that means. So that in Baldwin County, we are very busy with the front side outreach effort to make sure that everyone is aware of the change.
Back to those who are infected, when they come into a shelter, will those be private areas, or will all the infected people go in together?
So we've identified it's in the classroom area, so there will be some separation, but the actual the amount of people and the areas we have will dictate some of that. So they'll be separated from the individuals who are not suspected of having COVID, but they will be in an area where there could be more than a particular group that came in together. So yes.
We have time probably for one more question.
I have a question for
Sir?
Administrator Gaynor.
All right.
I'm Jason Johnson with Lanyard. I was just curious, this past week we've seen our state implement a statewide masking order. We've seen next door in Georgia kind of the exact opposite. And just speaking from FEMA's perspective, dealing with the different political subdivisions, kind of different ideas, and also different case levels in terms of managing COVID, how has that been, trying to get a top-down approach for different places that kind of have, I guess, different opinions in different situations?
Well, I've mentioned, locally executed, state managed, fairly supported. I mean, that applies to how we look at COVID across the country. And in some cases, and I'll speak from my point of view on the task force, we really never looked at states. We all looked at counties. What's a county doing? Because you may have a couple of counties in a state that have high cases, have high hospitalizations, and the rest of the state is a different landscape. And I think the president, the vice president, the members of the task force, because every state is unique. Every governor has a different set of priorities and looks at risk maybe a little bit different. But we want to make sure that we support, I think, from the task force, that we enable governors in any state, to include Alabama, to make choices that fit them. But again, mitigation measures, just on whole, they work. And so if you have an outbreak, you have high hospitalizations, you want to do a couple things. You want to wear masks, you want to prevent large gatherings, you want to make sure you do social distancing. all those things work, and again, there's lots of guidelines from CDC and others. How do you implement that in your particular state or county or city? So again, we want to make sure we support every governor across the country so they make the right choices. Thank you.
So ladies and gentlemen, that concludes today's press conference, and on behalf of Governor Ivey, I want to thank all our subdivisions of government, our federal partners, state partners, and our local partners for joining us today. Thanks to the press corps for allowing us a platform to kind of talk to the folks in preparation for hurricane season with COVID-19. And this concludes the press conference. Thank you.